Commander Velox stared at the tactical display, his purple tentacles twitching with what could only be described as cosmic-level confusion. The numbers couldn't be right. They simply couldn't be. Run the calculations again, he hissed to his communications officer, Lieutenant Zorba. There must be some error in our sensors. Zorba's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, each one looking more bewildered than the last. Sir, I've run them 17 times. The results are consistent. Consistent? Velox's voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. You're telling me that these pink, hairless mammals have somehow conquered half the galaxy while we were busy arguing about proper tentacle etiquette? The bridge of the Galactic Council's flagship, the mighty Presumption, fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems and what sounded suspiciously like someone trying not to laugh. That someone was Science Officer Clix, whose species had the unfortunate evolutionary trait of finding disaster absolutely hilarious. Oh, this is rich, Clix wheezed, his crystalline exoskeleton shimmering with mirth. The mighty Galactic Council, rulers of 1,000 worlds, outsmarted by a species that still uses fossil fuels on some of their planets. They don't all use fossil fuels, Zorba protested weakly. Some of them have, what did the report call it? Nuclear fusion? Nuclear fusion. Velox threw his tentacles up in exasperation. We've been using quantum entanglement drives for 3 millennia, and these humans are impressed with themselves for splitting atoms. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Thrix, the Council's expert on primitive civilizations, shuffled forward on his 6 legs, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe. His insectoid features were twisted into what might have been embarrassment, if insects could feel shame. Well, sir, Thrix began, his voice barely above a whisper, it appears we may have slightly miscategorized the human species. The silence that followed was so complete, you could hear a cork drop. Miscategorized? Velox's voice was dangerously quiet now. Please, Ambassador, enlighten us. What exactly did we miscategorize about a species that we've been monitoring for exactly 3 of their centuries? Thrix shuffled his papers with the enthusiasm of someone about to confess to accidentally starting a galactic war. We classified them as level 2 on the sentient threat scale. Harmless herbivores with delusions of grandeur. And? The word hung in the air like a death sentence. They're actually level 9. Apex predators with a genius for violence and an unhealthy obsession with turning everything into either a weapon or a snack. The laughter from Clix stopped abruptly. Even he wasn't finding this funny anymore. Level 9? Zorba squeaked. But level 9 species don't exist. The theoretical maximum is level 8, and that's only for species that have transcended physical existence. Apparently, Thrix continued, his voice growing smaller with each word, we need to update our scale. Commander Velox felt something he hadn't experienced in his 200-year career. Pure, unadulterated panic. The kind of panic that made you want to find the nearest asteroid belt and hide behind it for a few centuries. Show me the data, he commanded, his voice steadier than his tentacles. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a 3-dimensional map of known space. What they saw made every being on the bridge question their life choices. The galaxy was lit up like a festival celebration, but instead of pretty lights, each point represented a human colony, outpost, or scientific research station. The quotes around scientific research station were heavily implied by the way the data was presented. This can't be accurate, Velox muttered, but even as he said it, he knew it was. The evidence was overwhelming, terrifying, and frankly embarrassing. Sir, Zorba's voice was barely a whisper now, according to this data, humans have established permanent settlements in systems we didn't even know existed. They've been expanding for decades while we've been what, Lieutenant? While we've been having committee meetings about whether to officially recognize them as sentient. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a plasma blade and serve it at a dinner party. Clix, who had recovered from his shock enough to find the situation amusing again, leaned forward with obvious glee. Oh, this gets better. According to their own communication intercepts, humans refer to the rest of us as the bug-eyed monster crowd and have been placing bets on when we'll finally notice them. Bets? Velox's voice rose an octave. Gambling is apparently a significant part of their culture. Along with something called trash talk and an inexplicable obsession with putting cheese on everything. The commander stared at the display, watching as new human settlements appeared in real time across the galaxy. They were spreading like a particularly aggressive fungus, except this fungus had nuclear weapons and a twisted sense of humor. How, he asked the universe in general, did we miss this? The answer came from the most unexpected source imaginable. A small, tinny voice from the communications panel announced, incoming transmission from Human Vessel Absolute Unit. They're requesting permission to dock. Every being on the bridge froze. It was like watching a cosmic scale game of musical chairs, except the music had stopped and nobody wanted to be left standing. "They're here?" Velox shrieked, his tentacles flailing in patterns that would have been considered obscene in 17 different star systems. "Sir," Zorba stammered, "they say they've been trying to reach us about our ship's extended warranty." The silence that followed was broken only by Clix's barely suppressed snort of laughter. "Our ship's extended warranty?" Velox repeated slowly, as if the words might make more sense if he said them carefully. "Apparently it's some sort of human greeting ritual," Thrix offered helpfully. "Our xenoanthropology department thinks it might be related to their mating customs." "Mating customs?" Velox's voice cracked like a whip made of pure anxiety. Before anyone could respond, the main screen flickered again. A human face appeared, grinning with the kind of confidence usually reserved for beings who had never met a problem they couldn't solve with either explosives or clever wordplay. "Howdy there, space friends," the human chirped with nauseating cheerfulness. "Captain Jake Morrison, representing the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Mind if we come aboard? We brought snacks." The collective intake of breath from the bridge crew created a small pressure differential that set off 3 minor alarms. "Snacks?" Velox whispered, as if the word itself might be dangerous. "Yep. Got some of Earth's finest pizza, buffalo wings, and something we call gas station nachos that'll either cure what ails you or put you in a medically induced coma. Either way, you'll have an experience." Clix was now openly giggling, his exoskeleton practically vibrating with mirth. "Oh, I like these humans already. They threaten you with food." Captain Morrison's grin somehow managed to get even wider, which should have been physically impossible, but humans apparently specialized in achieving the impossible. "We couldn't help but notice y'all have been watching us for a while now. Real sneaky-like. Impressive, honestly. Took us almost 6 months to spot all your surveillance drones." "6 months?" Thrix squeaked. "We've been monitoring them for 3 centuries with our most advanced stealth technology." "Yeah, about that," Morrison continued, his tone shifting to something that might have been apologetic if it weren't for the obvious amusement in his eyes. "Your drones aren't exactly subtle. My 8-year-old nephew spotted one during his birthday party and asked if he could keep it as a pet." The bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their collective realization that they might not be as clever as they'd thought. "Captain Morrison," Velox began, trying to salvage some dignity from this cosmic embarrassment, "we are representatives of the Galactic Council, the governing body for all civilized species in this sector of space." "Cool. We've been wondering when y'all would introduce yourselves. We left our business cards on about 40 different planets, but nobody ever called back. Starting to think we had galactic halitosis or something." "Business cards?" Zorba whispered. "Oh yeah, standard diplomatic protocol back home. Hi, we're humans, we're new to the neighborhood, please don't shoot us, we make excellent cookies. That kind of thing." The tactical display chose that moment to update with new information, and what it showed made everyone's worst nightmares look like pleasant daydreams. Human settlements weren't just scattered randomly across the galaxy. They formed a pattern. A very specific, very deliberate pattern that completely surrounded the Galactic Council's territory. "Sweet binary sunset," Clix breathed, his laughter finally dying. "They've got us surrounded." Morrison's expression shifted slightly, and for just a moment, the friendly mask slipped. What showed underneath was something that made every predatory instinct in the room suddenly very, very quiet. "Oh, that?" Morrison's grin returned, but it was different now. Sharper. "That's not surrounding. That's what we call establishing a perimeter of friendship. We're real social creatures, us humans. Like to know who our neighbors are. And if your neighbors prove to be..." Velox swallowed hard. "Unfriendly? Well," Morrison's voice took on the tone of someone discussing the weather, "then we get creative. Humans are real good at creative solutions. Ask the Dominion of Keth how creative we can get." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Dominion of Keth. Or rather, everyone knew about what used to be the Dominion of Keth. Now it was mostly a cautionary tale and some very pretty nebulae. "That was you?" Thrix's voice was barely audible. "Self-defense," Morrison shrugged. "They invaded our mining colony on Kepler 442b. Killed about 3,000 miners and their families. We asked them politely to stop. They laughed. So we introduced them to our conflict resolution specialists. Your conflict resolution specialists destroyed an entire stellar empire in 6 weeks. Yeah, well," Morrison's grin was now positively terrifying, "we're really good at resolving conflicts. Permanently." The realization hit the bridge crew like a freight train made of pure terror. Humans hadn't been hiding their expansion. They hadn't been sneaking around building an empire in secret. They'd been doing it right out in the open, and the vaunted Galactic Council had been too arrogant to notice. So, Morrison continued, his friendly tone returning as if he hadn't just casually mentioned committing genocide. How about we all sit down, share some pizza, and talk about how we can be the best of friends? Because honestly, we'd much rather be friends than have to get creative again. Commander Velox looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Some were pale with fear, others were calculating escape routes, and Clix was somehow still finding the whole situation hilarious, but they all shared one common realization. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was over. The humans had arrived, and they'd been running the show for longer than anyone wanted to admit. Very well, Captain Morrison, Velox said, his voice steady despite the cosmic-scale revelation that his entire worldview had just been turned upside down. We accept your invitation to discuss our mutual friendship. Excellent. Fair warning though, the nachos are really spicy. We'll bring some milk. As the transmission ended, Velox turned to his crew. Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted non-binary life forms, I believe we just discovered who the real apex predators of this galaxy are. And sir? Zorba asked quietly. Yes. They offered to share their food with us. The implications of that simple act of kindness, coming from a species that had just casually mentioned eliminating an entire stellar empire, hung in the air like a promise and a threat rolled into one. Humanity had arrived. And they'd been here all along.